난 이 조용한도 난 어달람 냠는 제다 도요고다 안에 상하도 대별 남기 냠는 제다나 개발네 여러 지시 나도 나랑도 같이 걸으시네 나도 보고라는 간주 지게 난 동아래 죄체 상기 고방 토고 인자 다디 상기 고방 투비 치도 아주 택과 신비시 냠는 제발라 당보 가르쳐 오래서네 당한주기 기위신이 지금 당한주 롭장 가르쳐베네 랍간기엔 지고로 와다 기위신 띵고로 세상 기위신이 된제 냠는 띵고가 기침부레스 지사다 기위신이 냠 된제 기위신이 된수 냠는 제들이 니제라 되는 저기 된주 밀리를 뭐체되네 아니 나기에 전부인바 안 된주도 나한테 봐삼다다리 되네 된주 밀리를 뭐체 아니 삼다 되네 지와 믿어봤습다야다 되네 가서도 동아삼다야 되네 잠로제야 냠는제야 안 되네 거기 동아 타달래 괜다제 될래 탈되게 삼바자야 안 되네 디제라다 랑자마이메 신심전 탐제 다소소 예링메바 땅념 고미야다 디네 심전 탐제 랑기 안에 파마지 용화 임바 삼다야 디네 심전 탐제 랑라 진심보 임바 고미야 디네 심전리야 진심보 인자 안 심전리야 바 소소랑기 니 펜바 두기스비 진련줘야게 삼 고미야 디네 잠바 심전 탐제 대화대 대나 심비게 대화 템버쇼스메 잠바 고미야 대심전도 동화단 자워쇼스비게 아니 니죠고며 다심제 탐지 동아의 규디 다이래다 녀모보 원래된 중국도 제사 심쟁기 동아 규다 제바 자고도 대다 규다 제바 자야디 다디 니지기 선비게다 현재 쿠도 케비게 아니 삼다야체 다디 라산남다시로 안디젤라 디네 심제 탐지 된다 심제 탐지에다 거기 동안을 전시 상계 살아 거기 선비게 이 지긴 심생에도 다나 라라야 다대제 근유박하미도 디인장에 상계 고마 마토는데 지기미도 제사 심제 탐지게 되나 상계 고마 토벌 지구도 심비다 토벌쇼 심비다 장슈 심 삼다의 책으로와 이는 안주게 되네 동반이 삼다야 오두시네 냠내 짐바디체 안디제라 나 데니기 삼다의 체외제랑 저기다 타과 쳔비기 아니 나게 냠내 체야야 안 타과 쳔비다 나게 기회신의 생인의 땜바치 띠엔제 달라마티즈의 원슈 댕하게 담세도 돈바티 야보송 데네가게 냠내 게렘나 조름세데 야 랍제 냠내 제고레스 어디지 어두스 냠내 제고레스 아징아도다 기신 줄람림 자상하다 냠내지 림바디 다데 디인스 디쇼가 가서 디시 지산 제름시네 님마다 상예 장주 셈바 코로 상예 디기네 냠내 디네지네 상예고가 토바레 다데 장주 셈바 남게 디네기 냠내 난고레 지산다 제름죠 코로이네 디네기 냠내 나마 인스 다 경로즈이네 디나지 냠내 제쇼세제 어덴 디링아즈 디코르시로가 다 지오게 디네
This morning, then, we looked at the union of Sutra and Tantra, how they should be practiced in harmony, and also some of the differences between the Sutra and Tantric vehicles. For Tantric practice to be successful, one has to have a motivation where one is striving to attain liberation from the sufferings of samsara, but for the sake of others, to become a Buddha in order to lead them to enlightenment. So in order to generate such a motivation, one needs to go through the entire sequence of trainings as has been set out in our text, starting with the importance of relying on a spiritual teacher, receiving repeatedly over a sustained period teachings from him, reflecting and meditating on them, starting with that of the precious human rebirth, recognizing what an incomparable opportunity that has been attained, something through which a tremendous meaning can be achieved. But this precious human rebirth is impermanent. It will come to an end at any time due to any number of reasons. And therefore, we need to strive immediately to take the essence of this precious opportunity. Thereafter, one reflects on the potential rebirths that will be attained after this life, either falling into the lower realms or remaining in the upper migrations. And here in particular, one reflects on all the sufferings of the lower realms that beings are experiencing right now. Thereafter, one goes for heartfelt refuge, making a determination to generate all the qualities of the Buddha Dharma within one's continuum. The next training then is to reflect on the sufferings throughout samsara, to reflect on them to the point where one sees with vivid clarity that there is no lasting happiness to be experienced anywhere in samsara, and thereby giving rise to a determination to gain complete freedom from the suffering realms of samsara. Here, in dependence on all these trainings, one now explicitly turns one's attention to the situation that others are in. And here the trainings are to recognizing that they are suffering in the same way and for the same reasons as we are. We reflect on impartiality or equanimity, overcoming the mind that is close to some but distant from others. And thereafter, we reflect on the special relationship we have with each and every sentient being throughout all the realms of samsara, that they all, over past lives, have been our mothers. Reflecting then on the great kindness that our mothers have shown us, and actually all beings have shown us, and a tremendous benefit that we receive from beings, whether it's direct or indirect, through the relationship of interdependency. And this then leads to the strong conviction we have to repay the kindness that others show us, and have been showing us since beginning this lives, and continue to do in this life, the direct kindness as well as the benefit they bring to us. And making the determination to repay the kindness, the thought then turns to how best to repay the kindness. There are many ways that one can try. What is it that beings want? Recognizing that beings are no different from us. We all desire lasting, stable happiness. We generate the strong wish, may all beings experience lasting, stable happiness. But in order to do so in this way we generate love. But in order for beings to actually experience lasting, stable happiness, they have to be freed from all suffering. And here we generate the aspiration, may all beings be freed of suffering entirely. And we thereby generate compassion. Recognizing, though, that love as well as compassion are results that come about independent on the accumulation, that achieving lasting happiness and being freed of suffering are results that come about in dependence on the accumulation of specific causes. Here, one generates the aspiration, may all beings accumulate the causes for happiness and eliminate the causes that would otherwise lead to suffering. Recognizing that the causes for suffering is the contaminated karma that beings accumulate under the influence of their own afflicted minds, and the causes for happiness are the accumulation of minds of virtue. One generates the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility, where one takes it on as one's own personal responsibility to ensure that we guide each and every being in the accumulation of the causes for happiness and the eradication, the complete eradication of the previously accumulated causes that will otherwise lead to suffering. So we take this as our own personal responsibility. And thereafter, in order to fulfill this responsibility, one has to become the most skilled of guides, a guide that can lead all beings perfectly in accordance with their own individual personalities. One then commits to striving for Buddhahood for the sake of others and generates bodhicitta. With bodhicitta having arisen in meditation, one then embarks in the meditation on the wisdom realizing emptiness. And this is the process that one goes through in the sutra trainings to develop the required the requisite foundation for successful training in the mantra vehicle, and then one is ready to embark on the mantra vehicle. And here, as we saw today, one needs to rely on a fully qualified teacher and receive initiation into tantric practice, receive the tantric vows, committing to train them or guarding them well. Then one engages in the following of the spiritual instructions in the practices of the generation stage, and later then the completion stage that one receives from one's spiritual teacher. So all these practices that have been mentioned now are what we've looked at over these preceding verses. The Lamrim tradition presents the complete and unmistaken sequence of stages of training in order to attain enlightenment, starting with the need to rely on a teacher, concluding in the practices of Tantra. And this specific sequence of training is how Buddha Shakyamuni himself trained, it's how every single Buddha has trained, it's how all the bodhisattvas in the world right now are training, and how Lama Tsongkhapa himself trained. Therefore, he has been exhorting us throughout this text to endeavor, to strive, to train just like he did, to follow his example, and thereby achieve the self-same results.
Lucia, the Jinanga Gaza da maybe da the Jimbada Churim Yejung some Yamne Jedadi, Zuge, that Gaza, Chasalia, soon Shena, that Dickens of Chagorua. Tawachimbi Chu Yamne Chevala, and the Hajik and Delia, and Jige, Mavada, the Niki, near the Rua, Twinkin, Sawaj Kugore, Twinkin Sawaj Mevajilla, and then Anjuki, Tawachimbi Chu Shevaina, Yanjiki, Delia, and the Jig. Bacheruj Mongoli or what the names are Tabachimbi Shea, and Jugim Chida, and the Gaza, Senam Chimbu using Leda de Gilma, Sonshako, Bali Gasore, Sanskritolia, Sonshako Dire, Resungora, and the Dinane Ya, and Tabachimbi Chicken Nalea, and the Sanga Dorje Yalam Yamning Rimbadi, Dinane Yan, Dos Noah de Gilia. Twin Sati mother, and Tabachim Chushik and Chasalia, Sanga di Tigo Mar, Sungo Mar, just the Dineza, Sanga said you, Jidan Gansa, Nulma, Coronechik, Be Leda, Shu, Noble Leda in Le Sunam Shu, you can disolia to Suna Chagore. Just the Dinigi, Twingin Masawa Chile, Sunshavaina, and Digi. Yaguan Sabla and the Barshoya or Benedict, all that Dialogia sort of, and Dinina Divachimosa, Dinigi, and Gavadula Barsi Chagoro, Dineza, Sanga to Tibet, Yamlen Tibe, Wombo, Numbo, Dinigi, Chike, Diana, Sawa Sidija, Michasangi, Yonda, Capta member, and the Kusum Zimji, Yamlen Sigur watches, and Dinigi Yamlen Sigura. She said the Dame about an Nijung Gia, Dame be some dia, and then Nijung some dia that they did, and the Lamnim Chasala, Session, Tapachimpi, Yamnachig and Nada, and then the Oki, the Nidu, Ranja Church and that, just the Chasala, so at Chagorua.
All those who are striving to cultivate a path of the Mahayana, a path of the Buddha Dharma within their continuum, have to engage in trainings of definite emergence and reflecting on selflessness, coming to realize selflessness. So all practitioners, whether they are of the solitary realizer or hero or bodhisattva lineages, need to train in the cultivation of definite emergence and the wisdom realizing selflessness. To engage in the Mahayana Dharma, which is requires a specific aspiration, the aspiration for Buddhahood for the sake of others, requires many favorable circumstances. And without these circumstances being fully acquired, there will be many obstacles to to meeting and then generating the realizations of the Mahayana within oneself. One needs great virtue to meet the Mahayana Dharma, and even greater virtue to generate realizations of the Mahayana Dharma within one's continuum. Then within the Mahayana Dharma, as we heard this morning, there are the two vehicles of the perfection and Vajra vehicle. Not all traditions of the Mahayana Dharma present the Vajra vehicle. So therefore, the Vajra vehicle itself is of great rarity in this world. Because it's so rare to meet it and have faith in it and interest in it is also incredibly rare. So this rarity presents further obstacles to the cultivation of the practices that lead to enlightenment in the quickest possible time. And moreover, with the Vajra vehicle being as rare as it is, rare and precious as it is also called the vehicle of secret mantra, because one is encouraged that when one is engaging in any practices of the Vajra vehicle, there's no need to advertise this to others, to make a big deal about it, to broadcast it to all and sundry, but to do so quietly as one's own personal business without making a big show of it. Because doing so would just add or create further obstacles. So it's for this reason that it's also called the secret mantra vehicle.
Rangi yila gomba jashirdan, kasan shanlan penpa chevichir, yawa jibi yonsu sobe lam, gole ngagi sheba kewatis.
Returning to the text, the 44th verse, here Geshe Rinpoche presents why he has composed this text. In order to make familiar to my own mind and be of benefit to others of good fortune as well, I've explained clearly the complete and perfect path so pleasing to the conquerors.
Nadi sungu be koba khare lamnada deso rangi yila komba chashirdan asida. Ta jerum jo korongi ne sanye jumnendi gi ane sonshebe ki donga yonso sobe lamna ya ane jige tyasam gomsum jeje nyamlen jebadi ane sosoge ane jige denu tembe ki ne dunadra ane sosoko jige denegi 파 직좀제 지외이나 아니 소수게려 공부 숙체루라 디니 인자 디 랑게 소수게 공부데 랑게 다드다 바도 두시네 냠네 제빼면서 야고 슝 셈비게 가와 꾸며다 데니요 공제는 소수라랑게 두시네 지게 냠는 제 소수게 삼는 냠는 제바 나시 냠용 토네 마두시네 디바 인세오르데 제사 소수기 공부 냠네 야야 줘야게 된다라 이절 랑이라 공부 제위치스.
Geshe Rinpoche spent his life making really extensive efforts in hearing teachings, reflecting and meditating on their meanings across not only all the sutra traditions, but also the mantra teachings or the tantric teachings. So over an extensive period, received teachings and reflected and meditated on them repeatedly. And he did so with great joy, and it took tremendous pleasure in this, in his spiritual development for the sake of others. And as he says then in the first line of this verse, having engaged in such extensive hearing and reflecting and meditating, now in order to ever deepen his familiarity, he composed this text in order to make familiar to my own mind.
Dimzenjigla Kariorsana, Karsan Shanlan Pemper Javishirs. Karsan Shanlan Pemper Javishirs, Karsan Labiodu, Jina Gabli Karsan Situ Jashusemba. That day, Karsan Situ that Jashusemba, Dimembe, Gaji, Shui Yamlin Jagi, Dunyu Dumbo Yoba, and Dendigi, Delia Dunyu Dumbo Yobati, Delia Yamlia Jeba, Zundu Yoba. Denigi Tungian Chasa, Sandu Kengi, Tungian Sandugan Gasache. Denigi Tunja Chevi Gawa Sambo, Gasansine, Denigi Yamlen Jegi, Tungian Nuba Chasa Yudibasi. Denigi Desolia, and Dengi Dusma Sunshabati, and Conjugi Delia Dutch and Yamlen Jedi, Consoli Pembi Chirdo, and Yais, Chesa San Jeremichi. Then Kiwi Shin Tunsune Songche Kiwa Sumgi Lamyi Rimba, Tapa Chimpi Lamyi Rimba, Sanga Dorje Lamyi Rimba Nyamlin to Chine Songshabadi, Jigning Arangi Nyamlin Chen, Yamandu, Twesam Komsonje, Kombe Nyamlin Chebe, Sosololia, Gomba, Yahochagi, Ya Komia Tanda, Jikre, Yumzenji. Yumzenji, Denigi Nyamlin Cheg, Nubo Yutikan, Dunyagi Dumba Yuba, and Tunyan Chaza Santakan. Chinang Nigagi Tunyan Santakan, Desolia, and the Pempichip, Pandoya Chido, Yin, and that Zong will be Govaro, those Govani, Zomba Yinsur.
The first reason that Geshe Rinpoche composed this text is to deepen further his own realization of the Dharma. And the second reason is presented in the second line, and be of benefit to others of good fortune as well. The term good fortune in some contexts refers to bodhisattvas. In this context, it refers to those who have a great aspiration to engage in the cultivation of the Buddha Dharma, and not only have the great aspiration to cultivate the Buddha Dharma within themselves, but they have the mental capacity to do this and all the required favorable circumstances, and also are wanting to make great effort to utilize what remains of their life well, and therefore to guide them in how to utilize their life to the best possible way. Geshe Rinpoche composed this text. So the first reason he composed this was to deepen his own realization, and the second was to guide those who have a heartfelt yearning, a deep aspiration to cultivate the realizations of the Buddha Dharma within themselves.
And beg Naga Chimbo, the Shingu Dodo, and the Gera Chimbo, the Negitone Mares. Takase that Debros on the Gilona, Gerachimbu Chag, Donat Mungura, just a back Cavaresha, the Shushing Bidu, and the Doda Shung Ashing Kawashu Shesha, the Nigi Gera, Damianta, Yachidu Mains. Rangi Yellow Compa Chavi City, Rangi Yellow Com, Yamin the Yaya Drive, and the Yakirun, San Yugo to which to ins or San Yugo to which to ins. Tis not that. Rangi Yilo Goma Chevichi said, somebody, Rangi Gom di Shingbadi, Gom Te, Gomri Te, Yaya Chin, the San Yokoba to which the Ins Rada. Now Gazan Shala Pemba Chevichi said, Denigi, Dian, and Semjan, Denigi, Yamlenchi, Tunye, da, Deba, Pembigi, Dene, Dezuchasa, Dunga, Tana, Sabigi, Dezuchasa, San Yokoba, Nudu Topna, Sabigi, and Ninja. Jambada Ninja Ongi, and Consul Pempi Chidu, so I see the Garjo Gargosine, Gulua Chanju Sim Yukuni Lavata, and Shandu, and the Semja Tamji Dunga Jada, yes, Semja Tamji Dundu, and soon shall be then Suba, the Yaman Jane, Semja Tamja San Yukoma to which somebody else. Gulua Chanju Sem, and Pen Shan Semji Shandu, Shan Semji Dunga. Tai San Yukoma to which the Yin said, Datunda Disungore, Jeza, Disoyadi, Damyanda Yonata, Sosogi, Ningu Yonata, and the Jig, Denigi Chido Mains, and Semja Tamji to the San Yukoma to which was a bit Jaju Sim Yukunia Laje, Shan Semja Tamji, Dunga da Tasha, San Yukoma Tomna, as a bit Dinyan and Chebalatine, Tomna give a Pembe Chido, so my insur.
The purpose then of these two lines is to make it very clear why Geshe Rinpoche himself composed this text, that he didn't do it because he wanted to make it evident to others just how learned he is. He didn't want to brag to others, and he wasn't composing so as to get their fame or to get fame or have their respect, or people to look on at him with amazement at just how learned he is. Rather, he's saying in the first line with humility, I'm composed this text so as to deepen my own realization, and thereby to ever more swiftly attain enlightenment. Moreover, motivated by compassion, I want to help those who have an aspiration to live a life of great meaning. Not only have an aspiration, but who have the favorable circumstances so that they can cultivate the minds of the Buddha Dharma within themselves. They have the mental capacity, they are surrounded by suitable companions and teachers. I want to give them all that they need so that they do also achieve enlightenment. So the second line shows that he's engaging in the activities of a bodhisattva.
기부 총로 투명에 살람이르만 냠는 제다 기부 등다 투모가 람이르만 냠는 제다 기부 첨보다 기부 첨별람이르만 냠는 제다 다 기부 첨보라양 규파로도 심배 태바다 안티고 도제 태별람이르미 차사 용수 속바디 아니 마노와 마추바지 소수기 지다와 신의 냠는 제제 안에 소소 강샤바디 죄자디 디어레서 어디 손에다디 람림게 죄자디 디스 제자디 손바이스 지산 디 냠는 제바이나 안에 야오지고레스 가서 상계세야디 심전 동화다 자나 선배기디나 심전 동화이다나 상마기니라 안에 잠니제 공바디 심전이 된다 동화다라서 잠니제 공 람냠는지 심전 탐지게 된다 상요고바 토바지기스베 람냠는지 내내 상요고바 톱차네 사이 고론족이 심제 동화자가 탑람 띠엔제 람냠는지 림바 띠엔셔 요디다 다디 제르미치 손셔기 림바디 상이 손셔 요레스 세상 안한족이 디 소수게 냠는지 아니 소소강 토도 냠는지 소소게 줄라 냠는지 냠용을 토네 시엔라 판비고네 셰바이나 아니 롭된 제바이나 상이 투기고레스 제자디 람냠는게 디 람디게 상이게 투 계비가 남이름 바래. 제가 네 냠는 제반 상이 두기고래지. 인자와 계비 용수 조배 남지도 제가 냐 상이기 안자와 계비가 남 용수 조바지 마 송마 예세우르다.
The verse then continues, I have explained clearly the complete and perfect path so pleasing to the conquerors. The path that is complete and perfect is what has been laid out in this text, where we started by looking at the practices that are shared with a spiritual aspirant of initial capacity, and thereafter, independence on training those, how does one train? In the practices that are shared with a spiritual aspirant of intermediate capacity. And independence on training in those two sets of trainings, one then has a required basis to train successfully in the trainings that are unique to practitioners of greatest capacity. And moreover, not only have all the sutra practices being referred to here, but so too have those of secret mantra being referred to. And thereby, students come to see how it's in dependence on the foundation of the sutra that one will be skilled in one's vajra vehicle practices and will attain the realizations of the vajra vehicle. So that is the complete and perfect path that has been presented in this text. And when beings engage in these practices, from merely hearing the teachings to also reflecting on these teachings whilst they're hearing and then in their own meditation sessions, this brings great joy, great delight to the minds of all the Buddhas, because sentient beings are the object of their compassion. And when they see sentient beings such as ourselves, hearing the teachings of the Buddha Dharma in particular, when the teachings are complete and perfect, they know that in dependence on hearing these teachings and reflecting on them, suffering sentient beings are accumulating virtue. Suffering sentient beings are purifying the causes for future suffering. Suffering sentient beings are spiritually developing, which means not only is their suffering being eased, not only are they creating the causes for lasting, stable happiness, but at the very least, they are not harming other beings. They are harming others far less. Moreover, through their spiritual development, they are able to be of ever greater benefit to others. So when the Buddhas observe this, great joy arises in their mind because their heartfelt desire, that of sentient beings attaining freedom from the suffering realms of samsara, is being fulfilled.
That's why I lam didn't dig Geshe Kare lam Geshe Karating Yawaki Lam Yonsu Lam Tempare said. Chisan Geshe di Yawaki Yonsu Lam said, Lam didn't get Geshe Karasin Geshe Dires or Chisan Giosumi Lam Yirimba, Tabat Lam Yirimba, Tabachimbota, and Chimbatiana Nada, Dodang Niki Lam. There, San Yokoron to get Yamsu Lenji, Donalma, Donan Gunale, Koron to get Yamsu Yamle, just San Yokobatuma, Simjet Sonshabare, Chisan Dingar to Yamlen Chevana, and San Yotuki yours, Chisan Dinigi Yamledi, Maranga Gang to Yamlen Checha, Karangi, Yamlen Gang to Yamyon Tonema, and Dustine, this Churchati in Surda.
In this verse, then, the first two lines present why Rinpoche composed this text. Firstly, showing humility, and that he didn't do it for any purposes of fame or renown, but he composed this text guided by compassion, guided by love for others, wanting all beings to attain freedom. And moreover, in the second two lines, he wrote that what he has composed here is a complete and unmistaken sequence of trainings that all beings need to engage in that will definitely lead to enlightenment in the quickest possible time. And moreover, all the Buddhas in the world who are observing us, hearing these teachings, reflecting and meditating on them, leads to great joy and delight arising in their continuums, seeing that beings are creating the causes to attain freedom, to ease their suffering and pain, and achieve lasting, stable happiness, and to also be of ever greater benefit to others too.
차상 돈다디 고레 라우체 아니 고야기 베 야고체 고투야다 세부체 고투야체 아니 직용용 아니 자치모 메바치 돌두시네 돈다니보 차상 차다와 고디오체 또 송와 인세레.
Moreover, Rinpoche states, I've explained clearly. And this he certainly has done in that it's a very condensed text, and the language that's used is clear and easy to understand. One can read this text and gain an understanding of the entire path of the Buddha Dharma. Whilst the meaning here is deeply profound, it's readily accessible.
Da gewa di sido gewa sido da jerim jo korongi da sanji yu sung she bege da kiwo chungri chiri sumge lamge donga che yongso zoba sosoge nyamlenje ande nyamlenje de nyamlenje bade semje tamjege donda sanji koma tobi chirdo kunyo laje she semje donga da jane sem jamba da zeyu de shala she de she bade ya ane joja chasangwa de ane sik 안 nyonyong ko tiwoje shebege ande shebege sheba dela dena an gewa mangbogi 퇴섬 곰숨 제네 냠네 제간 는 개와 냠네 제발에 데네 개와 먹고 주요 제사 소소리야 개와 빠도 메바 개와 사요레서 제사다 니 개와 사바디 네 가르치고라세네 개완디 시데 개완디 로와 군자 남다 람사다 자와 잘메 규칙 제네 몰람 뎁시 제사 데딩이 데네게 개와 사시베 개완디 아니 셈자 탐제 다데 베네 람상보 인 자바침비게 장주셈 기심비고네 안에가 자바침 동아 송리게 람 냠는 이심바디 게디 있나 셈자 탄제디 파 지 냠는 지제 냠는 지 고급 냠는 영화 쇼 세지 로군게 남다 람사다 저와 마주 기디나 냠는 지야 가브리 냠는 지야 바다 냠는 지야 마라와 데네 멤버지 차상 데네기 냠는 지야 라와 쇼 선데 데네기 몰람 대바 인소 몰람 디기스 다 개와디야 데네기 몰람 되기스
The verse 44 concludes and then links straight into verse 45 with thus this virtue I dedicate. The virtue then that he is referring to is both the virtue from having composed this text as well as all the virtue he's created over his lifespan through receiving the teachings that have been summarized here, as well as all his reflections and meditations that led to him gaining realization of each and every stage of training. Those realizations that he made reference to at the end of each section, where he states that he has gained realization through training in this way. So again, this entire vast store of virtue that he's accumulated, not just through composing this text, but through all the causes that he created to be able to compose such a faultless text. All of this he dedicates, and he dedicates powered by his love and compassion, and thereby he offers all this virtue, all these causes of happiness to suffering sentient beings. And he dedicated specifically, may all sentient beings never be parted from the perfect and pure path. And the perfect and pure path refers to the complete and unmistaken trainings of the Mahayana Dharma, of both Sutra and Tantra, that lead to full and complete enlightenment. He dedicates this virtue so that beings who have aspiration to enter into these paths do so, that beings who are on these paths rapidly develop, and that those who haven't yet given rise to inspiration to enter these paths do so. This way, Geshe Rinpoche dedicates all his virtue.
Drame Gyuchi Jene Molam Dipside. Chisa Yan Dine Sungore, Chisa Dine Draw, Denigi Draw Simja Tam, Denigi number Tabi Lam Sambo, Sanji Sala, Yam Sanjas and Yuzu Toba Jibi, Yan the Donga Sonji Lamdi, Donga, Dodang, Sundu Jibi, Lamji, Yamlek Rimbati, Ni Gidi Ine, Simja Tamja Sanjigo, Matu Badu, Simja Tamjili, Duda, number Kundu. Unit dus Jawa Mebachi, do the number of the Simji Tamjilia, Chik Sung Je, and Ya Nyamlin Jeju Je, Nyamlin Je, Jehagi, the Niki Jeju Yata, the Niki Sonyag, Chu Sonyagi, and the getting the Jetuba shores in the Mona, gave a dilet in it in the Yonga shores in Mona Debadish.
And together with this Geshe Rinpoche in these two lines, he commits when he writes, I dedicate, may all sentient beings never be parted from the perfect and pure path. He dedicates himself to the attainment of this aspiration by all sentient beings. In other words, he dedicates his virtue that until each and every sentient being has attained this exalted state of enlightenment through training in the Mahayana Dharma, through both the divisions of Sutra and Tantra, he will apply himself wholeheartedly to guiding sentient beings to the achievement of enlightenment. He makes this commitment to always be a guide for sentient beings, leading them into the paths of the Mahayana Dharma and in the cultivation of the paths of the Mahayana Dharma through the trainings of the Sutra and Tantra. And he commits to this until all beings are freed from the suffering realms of samsara and have attained enlightenment.
And then, Najungi, Molam de Dartap, Tardu Dajan, Deshin. Depsalo se discore. Chizangi do Jene, Sosugi, Sanya Jumnendi, Son Shapi, Givosumia Lamirba, Donga Sondu TV, Lam Yonsu Zobalia, Tersam Komsumje, Nyamlenje, then Rangi Nyamlenje, Tone, Gangsing Badi Shanlia, Jambata Zivi Tone, Jamze Tone Shanlia, Fasan Namdat and Do Sene, Ma Sumba Is, Sungje, and Denigi Jene, Gawasasha Badi, and do the number Kundu, and Shanlia, Pampa Yonata. And the Rangi get the nation, the naked looked at Jetu, Molam Deba is, Chesnada, Molam Deba is, the Kyonozi Inea, 데니기 람용수 소발야 퇴섬 곰숨 강 투두제 소속이 냠len제 그래서 냠len제 강투제다 근데 소속이 데니기 제네 개와디 아니야 기디네 산조고 마토ye 봐도 아니 데니기 기디 뒤다 남바군도 동아 손제게 람지 냠len제 투어쇼 스몰람 데고그레스 몰람 자고레스 몰람 뎁세 아니 안디마제 소속이 냐주 냠네 소속이 냠len제 소속이 안 ngine sosoy nyamneje semje tham je sangje ko ma thobe chirdo gidi ne sosoy nyamneje nyamnyong e thone xianlia denje pando je tuba yong er sho sembe molam ja wo re so on du sung.
And the 45th verse concludes, I, a yogi, make prayers such as these. You, who aspire for liberation, should pray likewise. So, as with before, when he said words similar to these, he's saying, this is how I have trained. Follow my example. I have trained in all the many practices mentioned here, all the levels of training of the sutra and tantric paths. And I've come to gain realization of these paths. And all of this training I did, hearing so many teachings and reflecting on them continuously and meditating on them. All of the spiritual development I have undergone from the outset has been so that I can develop spiritually in order to be of ever greater benefit to you. And moreover, all this virtue that I've accumulated from the outset of my spiritual training up to now with the completion of the composition of this text, I dedicated so that all sentient beings, such as you, can achieve these self-same realizations. So therefore, please fulfill my heartfelt aspiration and train in exactly the same way as I have, and do so with unwavering effort, not sporadically, not just now and again, not just now that inspiration arises, but with unwavering effort. And do so as well with the same motivation that I cultivated as I embarked on this journey, to develop myself spiritually so that I can be of ever greater benefit to others in this world. And thereby, as you train in the same way that I have, you will not only definitely develop, but as you spiritually grow, all the skills and qualities that you have, use them to ease the burden of suffering of others. Use them to be of ever greater benefit to others.
Temba lana mipe temba da jawadi da la mi dini be gewadi yon towa ma le ba shin de me zime gyuru ngos ah ide yer da ale yer temba lana mipe temba da ale da dire temba lana mipe temba da jawadi da la mi dini be gewadi yon towa ma le ba shin de me zime gyuru ngos de ngwa ja de 다 단다 가르sun 거라서 템발라네 미베 템바다 시드 템바 시드 점리 나려야 아 저기 심제 디기 주야다 동아 세이 되게 최 냠랭이 림바 땡켄 템바 먹보여레스 다당아 저 땡지 템바나 소마나 이제 템바 먹보여레스 지산 디 템바 디 나네 ям 템바 초도 규바디 템바상 요즘네 데레스 템발라나 메 바세디.
In Genla's version of the text, he has an additional dedication verse, which we don't have. But the meaning of it is as follows. So the first line of the dedication verse refers to the unsurpassable founder teacher. And that refers to Buddha Shakyamuni, who amongst all the many spiritual teachers that there have been in our world, supreme amongst all of them is Buddha Shakyamuni.
Kare lamna de jinga zu lam nyamling ribadire kiwo sumge lam riba tonga sonru yonsu soba tonga nyamlengi rimba nyamlen chedi sanyi temba sanyi chimne dige da temba res da jan kunno chashu semju kunya la da ani dawa dame ba tenjen jawa chuwi ge tongba yu to be sherap di thone nyamlen chibe tonga sonru nyamlen chige temba di da temba la na me begin sanyi temba 냠네 산지고 뭐 투비 쳐도 냠렌제게 템바 디레스 지사다 템바 데라 lungi tempa da tobe tempa ni lungi kemba denege sonshi be dodan ngu chasan che dine lungi tobe tempa sinde digi jueja dadi deshi sheba na lam nyamne ki donga sonri ki lam nyamne ki rimba dire shire tempa de.
That verse continues with making reference to the scriptural and realizational teachings of the Buddha. So this is what we have been looking at. All the trainings that are shared with spiritual practitioners of initial and then intermediate capacity, and then lastly the trainings that are unique to the spiritual practitioners of supreme capacity. Now, all these teachings which have a specific sequence leading to the cultivation of bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness. There's the indispensable foundation for the achievement of enlightenment. So this then is referenced in this additional dedication verse, meaning the scriptural and realizational teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni.
Da Jawan dida lami dini bes Jawa sidu jeruma chigi denigi tumba sanje jumden de tumba lana mebach di sun shaibigi lam nyamlengi rimba temba ane donga sundu tebi lam nyamle rimba di ane sangi sun shabi dodan gyu chasan liya sosorang tyosum chia gogab rasons an tyobaje sambaje di duen nyamsu leje nyamlen che gogope mazi yabu rasons jesa sosugi nyamlin jeba goga rowa masi ranigi loma mangpolia xie pando pe masi gyachi mutu ya rasong sura dine goga brawa di pe masi yabu yinsi dine rawa di tangone suyu gajin re lamna lame gajin re sosugi ya lame gajin lame la dine lame gajin la dine sosugi lama la dine te lame zine chu shu an duanda di yane samdang rangi gom jab dine sosugi nyamnyo yobadi dine gi shanla xie je Gawasaya Nyamling Chia Gokab Rabadi, Sui Kitin Res and Lami Kitin Res.
Rinpoche continues that he's used this precious life that he's achieved well. He's spent his entire life engaged in hearing, reflecting, and meditating on the teachings of Sutra and Tantra, the entire Mahayana Dharma, the entire teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni. And doing this with great effort, he's achieved spiritual attainment, and he's done so solely motivated to be of greatest benefit to others. And all these spiritual attainments and this vast store of merit that Geshe Rinpoche has accumulated over the course of his lifetime has only been possible due to the kindness of others. In particular, his spiritual teacher. So the first line was with reference to Buddha Shakyamuni and his teachings, and now to his spiritual teacher. This opportunity to live a life of great meaning is all due to the incomparable kindness of one's spiritual teachers.
Gaitin da Sanyo Jumlen di Kusung Tusu Mi Yundin Dembi To Ne, and Dembi To Ne, and Sosorana Givi Yamlen Yua de la Jesu Girana, and Dimaze, and Denigi Sosorangi, Denigi Yamnesia Kokorat Be, Lameki, Lameki, and Kusung Tusu Yundin Dembi To Ne, Lameki, Gaitin Jesu Ten, and Duste. That Denigi, Tangi, Sosugi, Sanyo Jumlen Digi, Dembalia. Some gomsum Yamlin Sosorangi, like Shelia, and a Shea Pando Rudicawa, Lap Chimba Sawadi, gave a Shin Latine Dineo Gohaprawadi, gave a bottom of Sayores, Chesada Gawadi Karishoras, me di Gawadi, Nanashi, Gawadi, draw Maluba, Shin and Dembezi, Guru, said Chesa, me di Gawadi, Gudi, Telatine, draw Simjan Tam. Jelia and Che Yamlin Jagi and Nala Ya Teva Nashi and Che Tebachimi Chudon Sundu Lam Chaza Yoso Soba Manoa and Machuba Chaza Yoso Tintu give Shins the Chene and give Shin this and the Chu and Yamlicha, the Nego Ravi, Gurgu, shows me give a dela then the Simjan Tamjigi, the give Shin, Tini the Dempati and Chikapa Te give Shin dela dinner and Sosaranagi. Some Gomsum Chede, Nyamleya, 제네 산조고방 토비 규르규와 산유고방 규르도 토바쇼스네 안 규르규와 쇼스네 뭐하게 말이다.
The verse starts out with Geshe Rinpoche recalling the incomparable qualities of Buddha Shakyamuni, referencing his body, speech, and mind. Thereafter, he turns to his spiritual teacher and the tremendous kindness that his spiritual teacher has shown him in this life. That it's through the kindness of all his spiritual teachers that Geshe Rinpoche has been able to make the most of the opportunity that this precious human rebirth presents. And through him fulfilling the hopes and aspirations of all his teachers and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, this vast store of virtue that has come about through his extensive activities of hearing, reflecting, and meditating, all of this, he then goes on in this verse to dedicate, so that all this virtue that he has accumulated through using this precious life so well, he dedicates so that each and every sentient being can have a similar opportunity to what he has had, to come under the care of qualified spiritual teachers, and to have the enthusiasm, the burning enthusiasm, to engage in the complete and unmistaken Mahayana paths of Sutra and Tantra, and gain realization of these complete and unmistaken Mahayana paths of Sutra and Tantra.
아다 디바도 나 제름 책이 나 름름 뒤뒤 소야야지 다쭉 몰란다 오하다 제바 차상 다제 차사래.
So that then brings us to the end of the Song of Spiritual Experience composed by Lama Tsongkhapa.
당아질레 제름 쟁아줄야 름름 뒤뒤 소샤아줄라 랍자 가르 나서 센데 당아 저기 냠는 제고래 제름 저 그런 게 두소스 냠는 나와이 안 교환소나 된데는 냠는 제고래 세는 저기 두슬랍자 나와래. 그래서 당아 저기 냠는 제에 가르스나 대신 슈바나시레 아저 당보네다 나저 기위신이 당이 최 냠는 제발라 기위신이 그거를 기위신이 된제 기위신인지 안에 구성도수 연대제 기위신인지 안에 그진제 안에 니 기위신이래야 안 대바제야다 안 두스네 냠는 제야디 차고래 안에 니바들에 당아 저게 된식이 밀리는 뭐 디링 최시야 그거電상보 토에 맞아 야고이 되네게 된식을 뭐지 톱가와래 제가 되네 디링 토바디 빼면서 야고이 삼제 삼다야다 되는 아 저게 대안에 기지기지 지바래 제가 다되네 아주 된텔이야 최냠래 야고지 마도 왜 있나 근데 기지기지 지바 차로 기디나 내가 따와나신 돼요 말에 삼제 미다와 삼다야래 안디네 삼다쟁아 저기 다 제가 당아 저기 아승강 소란야와 이다 둔롤 김는 동아 빠도 매바 용국을 제가 디니게 동아 들레데 근데 타고 그거래 제가 동아 개와 치마이나야電상보 된주기 밀리는 뭐지 톱제 된델이야 최냠는 제토가지 용하야게 된다라 안에 수름소야다 짐발라 소바 냠는 지긴 세배 삼다야다 동아 들레 껴비기 니버데 술로 요래서네 gemne konjo sumla yor kebe konjo sum gyogre sembege da 이제 제 gem로셔야 되네 난 gemro지비 gemro게 랍제데 가르치 라고 그래서네 gemro게 랍제데라 가 저기 코에 동아 타달에 교연 토 코에 동아 타달에 주 탈고도 셈베게 탈도게 삼바지니 미해준 거 삼바지야다 안데야 다 라지고 많이 메시아 심장 탐제 다 랑기 지게 니링스카요 말다 니링요 말에 당념래 심장제랑이 파마규용와 몽부규용와래 안 심장제랑을 진침버려야다 근데 잠바 공미하다 심장제 대화다 되나 셈베 잠바 심장제 동화다 자와쇼 셈베 인지고 지사 심장제 동화다 자와나 디기다 대바다 녜지기 셈베가 하삼곰 디장에 심장 탐제 산요고바 토벌쇼 셈베게나 자주 셈삼다 두시는 삼다야래 자주 심장 탐지게 되는 산조고방 토벌 쇼 셈베 삼다제 되는 아주기 진배님네 자 수름서 버전으로 공야다 안 다음에 봐 동반이고 삼다 두시네 삼다야기 강토도 지야지 지래 안 되네 지기 되니게 삼다제에 제량아 주다 잡아 침비게 상하도지 TP 최념의 제바이나 되는 아주 왕슈 사와이나 소속이니마 왕 토바다 왕슈인데 되니게 왕슈비기다 내가 소속에 담치 돈바 가는 그 라미의 왕슈비 가는 가르치였으나 제와야 되게 하고 제야다 되네 안에 지기 담치 동바 응아게 동바 송고야 다 디스야고 송고야 다 디네 강토도 지야 돼 안주기 당아서 차상 지발에 가서 디네 차상 강토도 지어야 돼 안주기 다 디링기 시에게 냠는 지야 돼또 제쇼 송고로와 제사 디네기 지야 되리 당아서 디 람림 디딩기 아주 다 냐시 제비기 좀레딩 아주 디지어야 돼 내가 마서나 가서 디네 지어야 돼 가서 차상 다 지발에 어두시네 강토도 삼당 공부해야 돼 차고로와
As we've heard throughout this text, at the end of each training, Geshe Rinpoche says to us, this is how I have trained. And if you follow my example, you will achieve the same result, because I'm following the example of the entire lineage from the Buddha Shakyamuni and all the other subsequent masters. In fact, this is how every bodhisattva in the world and every Buddha that's arisen has trained. So therefore, please train just like I'm laying out here. And he started out by encouraging us to rely on a spiritual teacher, a qualified guide who can guide us in our spiritual progression, who can set out the complete and unmistaken trainings that we need to hear, reflect, and meditate on. We start in our meditation by reflecting on the qualities of his body, speech, and mind, so that we make a strong commitment to follow his advice, to implement his advice, exactly as he has been teaching us in his teachings. With this inspiration, we then embark on our meditation, reflecting on the preciousness of this human rebirth that we've achieved, and all that can be attained in this one life. What an amazing opportunity we have. However, this life is impermanent. It can end at any time. It will certainly end. When that will be, and how it will be, we do not know. But it can be at any time, and therefore, don't take it for granted. Don't procrastinate. Don't put off till tomorrow what can and needs to be done now. We need to cultivate the minds of the Buddha Dharma within us, right now. Because, and the meditation continues, at the time of death, one may well fall into the lower realms. So we have to ensure that from this moment forth, we live our life in accordance with ethical restraint. Ensure that our mind is restrained from the afflictions. Moreover, we cultivate the other required causes for good rebirths in our future lives, such those being generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, and prayer. Thereafter, we turn our attention to refuge, to those who have the ability to provide protection. In particular, it's through cultivating the minds of the Buddha Dharma within us that protection from suffering is achieved. And how does one then go about fulfilling the advice of the Buddhas? Here, we need to reflect in detail on the sufferings of samsara so as to generate the mind of definite emergence, this definite commitment to emerge from the suffering realms of samsara, to sever the root of all our suffering, the afflicted minds with ignorance of self-grasping at their root. Thereafter, the advice from our teachers and all the Buddhas is, having given rise to bodhicitta, to definite emergence, turn our attention to the position that other sentient beings find themselves in, recognizing that there is no difference between us and them. Here we start in the training that will lead to the cultivation of bodhicitta, overcoming this feeling that we have of being close to some and distant from others. Here we cultivate impartiality, recognizing that there is no difference between myself and others, and there's no difference between some others and all others, in that, from two perspectives. One, all beings long for happiness and freedom from suffering. And secondly, over the expanse of lifetimes, all beings have shown us tremendous kindness and being of great benefit to us, either explicitly acting in a way that's beneficial or implicitly acting in a way that brings us benefit. So therefore there is no valid basis to discriminate between others. Developing impartiality in this way, we then also reflect on since beginning of this lifetimes, we have a relationship of mother and child with all beings. And moreover, in their role of mother, as well as in so many other ways, they have shown us tremendous kindness. Reflecting on this leads to a natural wish to repay that kindness. And how to do so? How we generate love. May all beings experience happiness. Generate compassion. May all beings be freed of pain and suffering. We cultivate this further, as was mentioned earlier today, or earlier in this session, to the point where we generate bodhicitta. We commit to striving to become a Buddha, the most skilled of guides, a guide who can lead others in how to cultivate the causes for happiness, in other words, accumulate virtue, and how to eliminate the causes that would otherwise lead to suffering. In other words, to no longer come under the influence of the afflictions, and through cultivating the wisdom realizing emptiness, to eradicate the root cause of all suffering. Then, having generated bodhicitta, one meditates on the 6 perfections, the actual work of bodhisattvas, as well as explicitly then again the wisdom realizing selflessness or the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then lastly, having cultivated such a powerful basis, one also needs to engage in the quickest method to become a Buddha. That is the Vajra vehicle. And here we need to receive an initiation from our qualified teacher, ensure that we then follow his advice, fulfill all the commitments we have willingly undertaken, and protect our samayas well. So this is how we need to train, and this is what has been presented here in our text. It is our life's work, and it's the life work of, this is my life's work, as it is for all of you. Other than this, there's nothing of great meaning that we have to do. This is the life work for all of us.
Sunam Sawati, Ngoa Japore Swan Nashi, Tangazini, Tajik Gawadi, Gawasa Shavati, Gawadi, and Ngoa Jari. Chisada, Manzugi, Ngoa Jari Karesina, Tangazuki Sashi, Gawadi Latine, and Sanji Temba, the Sanji Chimnenti Temba, the Milling Delia, and Yundu Neba Neche, and Minyaba Yundu Neche, and Semja Tamjiki, and Yamlenche to a show Malam Jari. Karesina. 저기 동아시아 단 디기 주야들 탑람 샹다 당의 치용의 비토네 주야들 여대 이내 디삼지 다 아주 디기 연수소바 주투고 말 지산 디기 풍송소바 동아 차사세 디기 연수소바 주투wen디 상이기 추기 냠네들 지사 상이 템바 지산 디 점물인들 하나줄야 즉 고야게 계침부 차월 디네 인자 대상이 템바디 동아 소리게 템바디다 견리도 내바다 내버셔서야다 나 디니게 나 상이기 템바 내바디야 상이 템바 지금 하는 중마 롭된 제게 다 만족했다 지현디 고고래 지난 롭된 제게 만족 대대 차라 당한 점물인들이야 다 진정을 겨울에 뭐지 다 초도 교가 나 겨울지 코로나리 디니자 한 겨울지 구시 지금도 템바다 한 겨울지 전에 만족 차상기 태바침에 동안 라면수 줘봐 한 야네 야도 아니 손주 쉬지 냠내지 고 브라와 쇼스비 아니 겸주 구세링도 땜바다 디에는 최 손주 아주 냠내지 고 브라와 쇼스 몰람 자리
This then brings us to the end of this text that we've been looking at over for possibly a few months now. So we started out with an interest to hear these teachings because of our faith in Buddha Shakyamuni and Geshe Rabten. And in dependence on this faith that we have in Buddha Shakyamuni and Geshe Rabten, we've listened to all these teachings, been reflecting on them as well. So now let's bring to conclusion this practice in the same way as Geshe Rabten has, by dedicating just like he has. So in particular, we should now dedicate that the Buddha Dharma remains in our world stably. And not only does it remain in our world stably, but sentient beings who don't have yet an interest in the Buddha Dharma develop one. And that they all come to meet fully qualified teachers. and not only meet fully qualified teachers, but long to receive teachings and to put those in trainings and put those into practice and do so. Why is this so important? Because it's only the Buddha Dharma that presents the complete and unmistaken path to the total eradication of suffering and its causes and the achievement of lasting, stable happiness. Hence, it's so important. Hence, the need for the Buddha Dharma to remain stably in the world and for fully qualified teachers to remain stably in the world. So here, in particular, when we also dedicate that all the fully qualified teachers, in particular His Holiness the Dalai Lama, remain without obstacle in our world, teaching and guiding beings to the achievement of enlightenment.
공부하는 그런가 삼론날 가르요선 치취시 라볼롬예지 하고 영야게 레와요 언디 여바나신 진데 자자 야고요 도와줘 저거를 저 구세링도 땜바다 다 그런 게 투기 단다디 야고 주버쇼 세야디래.
Moreover, in addition to His Holiness, all the other great teachers in the world, such as Lama Zopa, may they remain stably teaching, guiding sentient beings. May more and more sentient beings meet them and have great aspiration to receive teachings from them and put those into practice. So may the great teachers in the world, such as Lama Zopa Rinpoche, remain stably guiding sentient beings. May sentient beings, being inspired by these great teachers, develop qualities in their continuum as quickly as possible, becoming just like these great teachers. Moreover, all the spiritual teachers in the world, those both that we have connection with, as well as those that we don't have connection with, all the teachers who are guided by genuine love and compassion, all the teachers, such teachers in the world, may their beneficial activities bring the results that they desire without obstacle, benefiting beings precisely in accordance with their needs. Not only may all such teachers abide stably in our world and may their beneficial activities achieve their desired goal, may all centers or places that have been founded in order to ease the suffering burden of beings, such as our Dharma Center, but may all such places, may the purpose of such places of benefit, may this also be fulfilled quickly, without obstacle.
Kisi di paradel da neim di kengi paso joya marashe nangla de be kabla nga chugi ine joya marabene da nga chugi che shu che sosugi nye da andi dondala samta de joade be masu ko ya bo chungsong be ya bo chungsong sen bigi da tusu tige chola joya mar sen bigi da ji sosugi gawa komya da ane denu indi ne an chige dene debi ringlia ane sosora gi dene gi gang to do and nyamle ji yin and deni cheba tiam da semje that Jiki Zamblinia, and Simjan Tamje, and Diki Yoya, the Dunga say, Jesa Dinigi, my Shungi, that Jiki. Loktron Geshe Pa, so Joya Mara, some Tadi, some Busto, what Tango, Minutinesa, Tanga did it, she has some Jella Pembi Chidu, and the Geshe and Yamden Java and Kewa to be a Kewadi, she has some Jen, Tamjele Paya, Zembling in Niam Shia, Zemblingi, Semje Tamje Dunga, Sayata, and Digi to be a more activity, Digi the Pandu Bem as a Lapchimbu Shusa, Tugudu, Yahushua, started Shungi, Puzzle, Drama Gasha, but the Sosogi, Chenyam Jala, Twinkin Shuchas. Ne Bacherim, Twinkin Resha, and Yamlen Javala, the Twinkin Resha, or Resha, big some touch, the Nigi Geshe to Yadam, the Nigi Geshe to Batilla, the Nedanzuki, Zembling, Neam Tamje. Nudu Shije, and Zembling da, Mita, Semjan to Rich Kaina, Le Dunga Tamje Shide, and the Digi Yoyata, Dushin Digi or shores and begin Zembling Shidi or shores to be Molam Jadi, that time you thought to Dushin some died, and the nigger some died, Gichimure.
Moreover, you've been receiving these teachings whilst locked down due to the pandemic. Of course, many people in our world right now are experiencing not just fear about the pandemic, but also restrictions on their movement, restrictions on their freedom. So here, you should generate great joy that at this time of restriction, you have used this opportunity so well. You haven't wasted this opportunity. And instead of having these restrictions on your freedoms, causing frustration to arise within you, you have transformed the situation well. So instead of feeling restriction, actually you've come to recognize that this is a precious opportunity that you've used well to gain actual freedom, lasting freedom, freedom with great meaning. So here we can turn our attention to others who are experiencing mental frustration and anguish at this time, frustration at the impositions placed on their freedoms, and generate the aspiration. May all beings utilize in the very best way what remains of this life, transforming all obstacles, transforming them into the path, using them as opportunities to create virtue, using them as opportunities to become ever greater beings, and thereby harming others less and being of ever greater benefit to them. So we generate the aspiration that just like we have transformed this opportunity into the causes that will lead to actual freedom, may all beings use all these opportunities of their life, transform them into the causes for lasting happiness, overcoming problems, overcoming difficulties, and generating harmonious relationships with others.
Tiki Yoyaki Tondala, Diniki, and the Korosuke Semkur Chimbushigore, Dinisa, Dangazuki Diniki, Pasu, Tamtra Shavati, Mansola Kangatea, Mansul Dubutaya, Dondachigo, Mar, Chasangazuki, Haptilia, Chasanga Nebo Moya, Chasan Digi Yoyaki, Samna Pe Yakutaji Dus Chevere, Dinisa Soso in there, that Diniki, Pombotiki Dus Chin, some distant Anzupa, and the Lord Jevare, some Tada, the Yakuri, big some of the Chisu Iran Cheada. So in a pass to Joya Cock Marad, Jig Maro, the bed needy Maroache, that's also around the Jig Paso Champion Giburatus Yungurati in air, and Gabriela Lamdam Majuache, Niam Dio Sosolo Goya, and Shanlepa Niam Gona, and Shanalia Kamataras, Nicala Kamatigo, Cesadi, Dini Debatingi, Nalia to Stebatia, Shengi Tiki to Yata, Shengi Dumai Maya Chidu in some chair, and the Rati take years and begin Denisha, then he Yaga Chimbu, I did, do not Chimbuchi in some base, some Taven, Masu Semia, Gama Matevata, Sosolia, and the Chica Boboya that indicate Cabaret dinner some time they get Chimuchagore.
And moreover, the situation that we find ourselves in, where we are, for some of you, you really are confined to your homes. Others, you have some freedom of movement, but still not a freedom of association and meeting people like we usually used to. So here, I encourage you to use skill to look at the situation that you're in and recognize that the leaders of our nation, as well as our state and our municipalities, they are doing their very best in accordance with their own individual skills to ensure that we are safe and that we remain safe, and not just us as individuals, but our community, in particular those who are most vulnerable. So therefore, because we are safe at the moment, and we have assistance from our various levels of government, we are able to receive these teachings and reflect on them, and spiritually develop, creating the causes for lasting happiness. And whilst we are doing this, others, our leaders and those in particular roles in society, are working very hard to keep us safe. And thereby, whilst they are working incredibly hard right now, trying to make the best decisions that they can, we have the opportunity to practice Dharma, being kept safe, and with assistance that is required. So thinking about it like this should generate joy in our minds at this opportunity. So dedicate that those who have positions of responsibility, those who are working in dangerous situations, that their hopes and desires are fulfilled in accordance with the Dharma, their decisions that they take are wise decisions, and moreover, dedicate that those who are experiencing frustration and difficulty in lockdown, that their minds ease, that they come to see this as a beneficial opportunity, and they don't experience any mental anguish or harm. So thank you very much for your time.